Hey guys, this is Brian Hilliard here, and I am with Tammy Cordes, and she is in the direct sales world with clinical skincare. Tammy, thanks so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we've got a lot of folks who are listening here on this, and I got to tell you, I'm fired up because, we've known each other for a little while.
Yeah.
And, you've done a lot of work in this area, direct sales. You've been pretty successful, from what I understand. We've talked a little bit about that. And not only growing your business, but also recruiting folks, right? And getting them moving and doing what you need to do. My first kind of question, I guess right off the bat is, tell a little bit, obviously you and I know each other, tell a little bit for the folks listening, tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, maybe how you got started. Give us a little bit of a feel as to what you've done to be successful and move forward.
Sure, absolutely. Well, my background is actually in the airline industry.
Okay.
I had a 25-year career with a major airline.
Okay.
And I also worked for a few years managing hair salons for a friend of mine. And back in early 2009, I was actually introduced to the company that I'm with now through my ex-sister-in-law.
Okay.
And she had called and left me a message to tell me about this wonderful opportunity and company that was launching in her area. She thought I would be interested.
Okay.
But what she didn't know was that my family and I were going through a huge financial crisis after the 2008 downturn of the economy.
Yeah.
It affected my husband's job,
Yeah.
and so that's in essence why I was working 2 jobs.
Right.
And we also have a teenager, so life was pretty crazy. And needless to say, I did not call her back when she left me this message about this opportunity.
Right.
However, when I did receive some information from her in the mail and I took a look at it, I was struck immediately by what it was and who it was.
Right.
I knew it was a huge opportunity for me and my family, and I had a very strong desire to get my family out of this financial situation we were in, and I saw this as the way out.
Right.
So I decided to go for it.
Okay.
Very part-time. I really didn't have a lot of extra time, nor did I have a lot of money to put into starting a business.
Right.
But luckily, I was able to figure those things out, work it very part-time alongside what I was doing, and began to build a business and earn an income with both customers and beginning to bring on team members. Over time, I started to see a significant increase in my income. In 3 years into it, I was actually able to walk away from everything else. I took an early retirement from my...
Retirement? You don't look like you're retired. She looks great.
Yes. And I was able to walk away from that 25-year career to do my business full-time. So now it is definitely a full-time career, and I'm completely out-earning my previous career, and it's growing every month.
And you make a great point. You made a lot of good points, but the first one I kind of want to delve into was when it was presented to you, it didn't resonate with you initially because it just... wasn't where you were at. One of the guys talks about this, the guy from GoPro, and I'm trying to remember his name.
I can't remember his name, but I just saw him on Shark Tank.
Yeah, GoPro. Really? He was on Shark Tank?
He was on Shark Tank recently, yeah.
Okay, we'll have to think about that maybe later. Anyway,
that's one of the sharks, obviously.
Okay, so the GoPro guy, one of the things that he talks about is that when you're recruiting, there's a clock. And this is the analogy that he makes, okay? So this is not my own. It's like a clock. And if when you're recruiting, your business opportunity is at 12 o'clock. You meet people with different places where sometimes they're at 1 o'clock, sometimes they're at 2 o'clock, sometimes the person's at 3 o'clock, sometimes they're at 11:30, okay, 11:45. But if the right time at the right thing is 12 o'clock, a lot of times people are discouraged when they run into people who are not at the 12 o'clock. And what happens is, in my understanding, they just kind of go away and don't follow up. But that's probably not what you would recommend, not certainly for your team members, and it sounds like not based on your own experience.
Absolutely. Everyone is in their own mindset and their own time frame, and what's going on in their life is usually what's prevalent at that moment. So timing is everything in this business, and that's why it's very important to be persistent but be patient as well at the same time, because you kind of have to let people go through their own process. And whether or not the opportunity is right for them, period, but also is it the right time for them. And for me, I think when I first heard about this opportunity, I didn't think it was the right time for me, that I just wasn't fully listening at first because I was completely overwhelmed by my circumstances.
Right. And Eric Warr, by the way, just FYI, I just thought about that. Eric Warr
good.
is his name. Yeah, WORRE, if I'm not mistaken. Go Pro. Awesome. But yeah, so tell us a little bit, if you were talking about recruiting, because we're talking about that, we just jumped right in.
Right.
What is, you said patient and persistent, because that's something that Deb talks about a lot, Deb Dowdy, co-author. Right. She talks about that a lot, patience and persistence. What does that mean to you, and how would you, if someone were here listening to us and you wanted to have that conversation about being patient but persistent, give us a real, like, how does that look in everyday direct sales life?
Well, I tend to not use the word aggressive because I don't feel I'm an aggressive person.
Yeah.
But to me, persistence means that you keep talking to someone and keeping them in the loop if they show interest.
Okay.
You're always checking interest with people along the way.
Interesting.
Right? So their interest could be not as big in the beginning, but it could grow over time. Again, depending on the circumstances in their life and the timing for them.
Right.
So you will never catch the right person at the right time if you don't keep touching base with them.
Interesting.
So it's about really working with the people who've shown interest. Basically, if someone's not telling me no, then I'm going to keep talking to them and dripping on them over time with what's happening with our opportunity, with our products, with our company, because you never know when things change for someone that they are actually looking.
I love that. I love that. You know, one of the things I'd be interested if you use some software, but I use personally a CRM for this. This is me personally. I use a company called Less Annoying CRM, and a lot of different companies have their own situations in terms of stuff, which is fine. But if you're, looking for one, I use Less Annoying CRM, and it is a toggling system that allows you. It's like $10 a month. It's criminal, actually, how little I'm paying for this, but I should go to jail. But it's $10 a month. Less Annoying CRM, calendar functionality. Toggling for like the tasks and things like that, and being able to stay on top of that. And regardless if you have your own organic deal or if you want to do something else, the point is if you're going to have that conversation, you also have to have some organization.
Yes.
Right? So that you can stay on top of this, I would think.
Right. You want to have a system in place for keeping track of your prospect list, but also your follow-up and where you are in the process with those people. And yeah, there are a lot of things out there, and I know a lot of people, different people use different things. It's about finding what works for you. And I mean, some people like the old, book, have a date book or a file, flip file, whatever.
I'll give you a little secret. Deb does that, just between you and she has
it's kind of old school, but I mean, I came from old school too, so I've gone from binders, like business cards in piles, to binders, to finally becoming more electronic. It's been a process, right? But it's really just finding what works for you so that you can stay on top of your business.
That's awesome. All right, so a couple things I have here. I got a few questions that I think are important that I definitely want to get out there. And you kind of alluded on this a little bit. You talked about people that you started off in a part-time situation.
Yes.
Okay? And I know that there's some people who are listening to this who are maybe thinking, man, I don't have time, Tammy. I mean, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, I don't know. But they're saying, I just don't have time to be doing this full-time. I mean, you're doing all this, you're earning this money, you've got this team, you've got all this stuff. Tell me how I could, if you were talking with somebody in a part-time situation, maybe they're in a corporate world. Okay, or maybe they're whatever context you want to do it in. But what would you tell somebody who is maybe looking at an opportunity, whatever it is, and how would they go in a part-time? How could they be successful? Give us your experience on that.
Right. So yes, I find that most people who start, at least with our company and with other businesses and companies I've known over the years, most people do start part-time.
No question.
And you really want to do that, I think, because you want to give yourself time to build your business to a point where if you want to go full-time, you can. You don't have that added pressure of, you don't have another income coming in or whatever. So it does make sense for most people to do it part-time in the beginning. And it's really just about having a strong desire to succeed. You've really got to believe in what you're doing. Whatever company you join or product line, you want to have a strong belief in that, and then you want to have a strong desire, a strong why, as to why you want this to be successful. And if you do that, you will make the time. And it's really about being on top of your schedule and that you're making time for your business on a daily, weekly basis.
Let me stop you there for a second, because that's a huge point, I think, making time for the business. I was actually, Deb and I were on a call the other day. We did a conference call with a team. And one of the women actually registered for one of our programs, which made us happy, obviously. Yeah. And I was going back with the emails, and she said, because one email when she registered on PayPal was, AOL. And another email that somehow I got was Gmail. And I asked her, I said, well, which one do you want us to use to send you the program, the boot camp?
Right.
And she says, I think she said the Gmail, and she says, because one of them I use for work, one of them I use for personal, so I don't want the latter to distract me when I'm in the former. And part, right? I think I'm hearing you say, part of that is not only making time, but not only not allowing other stuff to get in your way. I'm asking.
Yes. It's making a conscious effort, and whatever you decide that looks like for you,
right.
on a weekly basis, however much time you have to put into it, if it's 5 hours, 10 hours a week, whatever that is,
right.
It just needs to be purposeful and it needs to be consistent.
Right.
Consistency is the most important thing, because we all know that over a period of time, your efforts will compound over time to
right.
lead you to success, just
right.
like when you want to lose weight.
Right.
You do a little activity every day,
right.
You make it a priority so that you're scheduling that time on a daily, weekly basis. And I always tell, most of my team members have started out very part-time.
Right.
And I just tell them, listen, look at your calendar, look at what you can do,
mm-hmm.
put your most important things in your life on the calendar first.
Obviously.
Your job,
right.
Your
family.
Things with your family,
yeah.
whatever those things are,
right.
And then you're gonna piece in your business
right.
in those nooks and crannies
right.
throughout the week, but
right.
be consistent,
right.
Because if you go hard for a few weeks and then you lay off a few weeks,
right.
you're not going to see the results you want to see.
That's awesome.
Just be consistent.
It's consistency, what I heard. I heard organization a little bit in there. I heard dedication a little bit in there. I love that why point, which is something we talk a lot about ourselves.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's the why that keeps you going.
It is. It's what's going to really keep you focused on. Because, when I started, I had 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So there were days or evenings that I had something on my calendar, and then at the end of the day, I didn't feel like doing it.
I know. Yeah.
But I always went back to my why.
Right.
And if I just take this little bit of time to
mm-hmm.
do this and
mm-hmm.
push through this,
mm-hmm.
eventually I will have the time freedom that I want. And I do have that now.
That's awesome. All right, that's good stuff. So we talked a little bit about part-time and moving forward with that. Tell us a little bit, because you got into this, again, through that answer, mindset. There's a lot of people, and a lot of women who listen to this, and I understand, and that's fine. There's a lot of ladies that are listening now who are in direct sales. What is it? It's like probably 80 to 90% women, if I were to guess. I'm just coming up with a number.
Yeah.
And so there's probably a lot of ladies listening to this, and they've got their husband, who may or may not be helping. They've got their kids, who may actually be the opposite. They've got their family, who may or may not be helping, and also might be the opposite. Mm-hmm. How do you keep the right mind, in your opinion, how do you keep the right mindset when you're going through ups and downs and trying to get through this thing called direct sales and be successful?
Right. Well, my initial mindset in the beginning, I think, was just that I simply just made a decision that I was going to succeed no matter what.
Okay.
And then along the way, you learn to manage your ups and downs and how you deal with those.
Right.
I tend to have a long-term vision for what I wanted. I knew that if I kept doing what I was doing,
mm-hmm.
that eventually I would get to where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really always about going back to my why.
Mm-hmm.
To get through those downs.
Mm-hmm.
That really is what pulls you out of that. Is the why.
And that's a good point. I play a lot of golf, and I don't know if you play golf. Do you play golf?
No, but my husband does.
Okay, all right. Maybe you play golf. I play golf. I play golf. And one of the things I always take a look at is, and I saw this, I think it was a book. It might have been a book. It says golf is not about perfect. Golf is not perfect. And what happens is, so if you're not familiar with it, what happens is, so you're playing, so obviously the lower the score, you win, better you are, okay, and you spend 4 hours trying to do it.
Yeah.
All right?
Yes.
And somewhere between those 4 hours in that afternoon, depending on how good a player you are, you shoot anywhere between 80 and 120 shots. That's kind of what you do.
Yeah.
And what for the interesting thing, I took this mindset, I've been in business a while, and I took this mindset, and when I was in golf, I didn't really get too up or down when I was playing. It was kind of, you hit the shot, and if it was good, I did a little fist pump. I didn't do the tiger, right? But I did a little fist pump, and I was nice, and I was happy. But when it get down, I didn't get too down either. And I remember this, I came to this conclusion with my own life about 5 or 6 years ago. I said, you know, if I approached my life more like I did my golf game, just out on a course.
Yeah.
I said, I think I would be much better off. And I tell direct salespeople this too. You know, you don't want to get too up or too down. You want to be, back to your word, consistent, not only I think in your effort, but in your demeanor.
Yes.
Okay? And because here's the other thing. You know, you talk about recruiting, people see you. And I'm not, you know, Deb talks about this all the time. You don't want to get on the bus. What did she say? You don't want to get on board with a parked car. That's what she says.
Right.
And if you're going to be, if I'm talking to you and I'm trying to be recruiting and talk about my team and this is what you need to do and I'm making, you know, $1 million, you know, doing all this stuff, yet I look run down.
Yeah.
I look, you know, whatever, you know, and so mindset is a very real, and also I think mindset helps you with your family, if I'm not mistaken as well.
Absolutely.
Just making sure that you've got the right.
Well, and, I mean, and we've heard this over and over before, but the key to success or failure is in between your ears.
Right, right.
So it's how you feed your mind, and you know, whether it be reading books or attending events and hearing positive messages, talking to your spouse, talking to your sponsor. You know, anytime I felt down, I asked myself, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Any obstacle, challenge that came along, and I had many, many.
I know.
Over the last 6 years.
Right.
It always came down to, okay, Tammy, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
And I knew I had to pull myself out. So I would call my sponsor or my upline.
Right.
I would listen to a recorded conference call, a training call, just to hear someone else's story that would inspire me. But it's up to me to take the action to pull myself out when I get into that funk.
That's interesting. And one more point on that. This is not implying anything with you because you're doing great. What would you say to people who maybe their husbands are not as, and again, this is not applying to you, but what would you say, because your husband's great, what would you say to people who maybe their husband isn't necessarily as much, or just in their corner? I mean, you know, it's interesting, people, we're not talking husbands now. People, Americans, love winners. Right? I mean, they love you when you win, and when you start making money, boy, people come in, whatever, it's just, you know, who are you? I don't know, I'm your friend, you know, it's just all of this stuff. But when it starts out, all they see is the Saturday morning calls, the Sunday night conference, maybe with your team, they see you going out on Wednesday evenings for, I'm just making up a home show party, you know, they see all that, but they don't really see, how do you, if you were to give a little bit of advice to people who they have in court they call it an unresponsive witness or an uncooperative witness, how would you kind of navigate that, mindset-wise, action-wise, what would you tell people?
Well, the simple answer would be the Field of Dreams answer, which is if you build it, they will come. If you start having success, then that's what initially brings them around. And I know that's a little bit of a catch-22.
Because you can't have,
Yeah, because my husband was not on board when I started. He thought I was crazy.
I didn't know that.
When I started. So, but because we have a good relationship, he was okay with just staying out of my way. And not trying to sabotage what I was doing. So I was able to build it enough to where he saw the money coming in and he started to change his way of thinking and became more supportive and did start to help me with those little extras, you know, like taking our daughter where she needed to be and maybe cooking dinner or you know, filling in and picking up the slack. So to speak, where I needed. So I think, again, your why is going to be the thing that's going to push you through that. And once you start having the success, it doesn't have to be huge success. You know, it could be a few $100s help pay the mortgage or help pay a car payment.
That's exactly right.
And a negative spouse can be like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, and they can come around. And I think in terms of your family, especially if the kids are old enough to understand the concept, you kind of include them in on what you're doing.
Interesting.
You know, I'm doing this so that someday we can do this.
Go to the Bahamas.
Disney World, whatever, you know. So my daughter was very aware of what was going on. She was about between 12 and 13 when I started. And so she has seen the transition of our finances and how our life has changed since I started this business. So I think she's okay with the amount of time that I had to take away to do that.
Right.
But I think if you make it a priority and you make your family a priority, like I said before.
Right.
If you're putting those important things on your calendar,
right,
and you're there when you really, really need to be there,
right.
And there's always going to be. I've heard this said before. There's really no such thing as balance. There's just choices. Yeah. So if you just make those choices, right?
Yeah.
And you let your family in on that. It's like, honey, I can't be at this because I'm going to be at this other event that you're doing. That's really important.
That's an awesome point. And then the other thing is too, you can also be you can also engage your upline. I mean, you mentioned that. You talk to them, give them a call if you need a little bit of live support. That's good stuff, Tammy. I like that. There's no such thing as balance, only choices. I'm going to have to do something with that. Okay, onward. So we talked about your corporate job. We talked about some of the mindset things. Oh, this is. I got two more questions. What would you say? I want to talk a little bit about some nuggets of wisdom, and you've been kind of spraying them out, kind of as we've been going. So maybe this is going to be a little redundant. But what would you say if you were to boil it down to maybe 2 or 3 things, nuggets of wisdom over the last X number of years? What would you give to somebody maybe who is either A, new, if you want to do it that way, or B, maybe they've been doing this for a while and they haven't turned the corner for whatever reason?
Right.
Nuggets of wisdom.
Nuggets of wisdom. This might seem out of left field, but years ago, back in the 90s, I had the opportunity to attend a seminar where I heard Jim Rohn speak. One of my favorites. Yeah. And there was something he said that weekend that has stuck with me, and this is since the late 90s.
Okay.
And it's, never miss an event. You never know which one will change your life.
That's exactly right.
And
that's exactly right.
That's I took that to heart in my business. Now, I was in another company at the time. Yes, don't miss, your company events. Don't miss your trainings. Be present, be there. But I also took that to heart in life.
Right.
Because you just never know when that very special person's going to walk into your life that could change your life.
Right.
And you never know what you're going to learn or who you're going to meet. And so I've always kept that in the forefront of my mind. And when I started building this business, I did a lot of cold market.
Okay.
My warm market didn't work out so well for
I understand.
me
Okay.
in the beginning. So because I was doing a lot of cold market and trying to meet people, that attending events thing was huge for me.
Right.
So those days I was tired and didn't feel like it. Yeah. I would say, wow, Tammy, what if the very person that you're supposed to meet is at that event and you're not there to meet them? Right? That divine intervention thing. If you're not there, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So that was one key nugget that's always stuck with me.
Okay.
The other thing is that leaders show up. Leaders are there at the events, the trainings. Your team is going to follow your lead.
That's exactly right.
And you set the pace for your team.
That's exactly right.
My philosophy is that I'm not going to ask my team to do anything that I'm not doing.
Right. Or wouldn't do.
Or wouldn't do.
Right.
Yes.
Because you might reach a point where you don't know how to do this anymore.
Exactly. You're right about that. You're right about that.
Right.
But yes, I don't ask them to do what I wouldn't do, and I've got to walk the walk.
That's exactly right.
Not just talk the talk.
Right.
So the other one, the big one, is don't quit.
Boy, you just got to keep chopping wood, don't you?
You can't quit. And we know the statistics. Most people quit right before they see who's and they don't know because they didn't have the opportunity.
Right.
But don't quit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, one last thing here is, and this is something that I love asking people, would be if you could go back in time, okay, and talk to yourself when you first started. You're like, Tammy, right.
Can I really do that? That would be awesome.
Well, I don't know, actually. Probably not. But if you could go back in time and talk to yourself, kind of maybe your first year in business, and maybe this is related to the nuggets of wisdom, I don't know. So if it's some of the same, that's fine. Yeah. But what would you, what are something that you've learned now, that you just didn't know then?
Right.
And would really be helpful.
I didn't know that I could do this.
It's interesting. That's confidence.
Yes. Yeah. So if I could go back to then, I would say, because I had belief in the opportunity and the products, I had all of that.
Right.
What I lacked was belief in myself.
Right.
And I would tell myself, you can do this, you will be successful.
Right.
And to go for it.
Right.
To really go for it.
Right.
And talk to more people faster.
Right.
And be more confident.
Right.
When you're doing that.
Right.
I think when I first started, I just didn't have that confidence.
Right.
And I think that's true with a lot of people who are new to direct sales or new to a business. They don't have that confidence in the beginning, and that can hurt because that's when you're working your warm market, right?
Interesting.
So yeah, and it's kind of one of those things. How can you get that? And I think that's something you have to look to your sponsor.